One thing all managers do, regardless of their place in the organizational hierarchy, is make decisions. Decisions about whom to hire, what to sell, and even what markets to enter, to name a few. Now, of course, all decisions aren't weighted equally. Certainly, a decision like whether to acquire another company has a more significant impact on the organization than, let's say, deciding what to serve during the working lunch. But regardless of significance, each decision has a unique set of factors that need to be evaluated. Now, this video isn't about how to make the right decision, because what is deemed to be right is up for debate. What this video is about is how to make rational decisions. For starters, let's discuss the basic idea of decision making. I'll define decision making as simply a process of choosing a course of action out of a number of different alternatives. But as managers, we should strive to do more than simply make decisions. We should strive to make decisions that reflect a careful analysis of the available facts and that best solve our established problems. So how do we do such a thing? Well, probably one of the most common frameworks for making decisions is what's known as the rational decision-making model. To summarize the model, it represents a linear process designed to help the user make more rational decisions. There are a total of 6 stages, each of which is intended to get the user closer to that final decision. Now that we know a little bit about the model and its intent, let's see. The first step of the rational decision-making model is to identify and define a problem. Now, people experience many problems each and every day, but we don't address all of them because they may be somewhat insignificant. In order for someone to address a problem, the gap between their current and desired state needs to be enough to motivate them to exert the energy needed to solve the problem. Assuming that we identify a problem, we now need to define it. It can be a very difficult process as people often identify the symptoms of a problem and fail to identify the actual cause of the issue. Let's say my problem is that my house is too small and I need a bigger one. Family is growing, we're accumulating more stuff, and our existing space simply isn't meeting our needs. So I guess I need to buy a bigger house. Well, maybe not. What I'm demonstrating here is that we often make decisions too quickly and also without considering all available options. What often happens is we attempt to define a problem, which is good, but we also attempt to establish a solution without thinking about the alternative. Maybe I could have a room added on to my existing home, or even place some unused items in storage to free up space. Those things may solve my problem, or they may not. The important thing is that at this stage, we simply want to define our problem in such a way that allows us the opportunity to generate a host of solutions later. So let's say for now, my problem on its most basic level is actually related to space. Next thing we need to do is to identify the criteria that will help us make our decision. This criteria consists of specific standards that we'll use as really a guide to our decision-making process. It's important to outline this criteria ahead of time so that we avoid basing our decisions on maybe a few factors without considering a host of others. So let's get back to our problem. We know that space is an issue and that we need to identify some criteria to help us generate some solutions to our problem. Cost is likely to be a key consideration as some options cost more than others. Time needed to execute a particular decision should also be weighed. Maybe even the extent to which the problem solves the issue permanently, or if it's simply a quick fix. It could generate more, but I'm sure you're beginning to get the point here. One thing I will mention is that if our problem was actually trying to buy a house instead of solving a space issue, we would establish criteria a little differently. We'd likely focus on things like quality of schools, distance to activities, crime per capita, and some other factors. Now that we've identified some of our decision criteria, we need to weigh that criteria. Because each criteria is unlikely to have the same level of importance, we need to weigh those standards differently. There are a few ways that we can accomplish this. The first is by using what is known as an absolute comparison, which you commonly find in movie ratings, hotel ratings, and several others. This method of comparison is helpful because it allows the user to compare items side by side. So if you're shopping for a car, you can look through consumer reports and actually compare different vehicles in specific categories and all together. This is accomplished by incorporating a ranking system, where users enter a value reflecting the importance of the criteria on a scale. Let's say that we establish a scale starting from 1 and going to 10. 1 would indicate that the criteria has virtually no importance to us whatsoever. The score of 10 would indicate that the item is very important. So we would go through each criteria and weigh their significance to us. Since this is an absolute comparison, we can assign the same value to different criteria as well, since we're evaluating them on their own merits and not in relation to another criteria. Applying absolute comparisons to our example, we may rate cost as a 6, time as an 8, and whether or not the solution permanently solves our problem as an 8. Another method of weighing criteria is to use relative comparisons. Relative comparisons involve actually comparing each criteria with another. So by rating each criteria against one another, we obtain an understanding of the criteria that are most important to us. This can be useful when attempting to weigh criteria that receive similar ratings under an absolute comparison. Take, for example, our last 2 criteria. Chances are that they are not equally important. So by rating them against one another, we firmly established which one is more important. The value of weighing our criteria is that we help shape the way that we make decisions, so we know exactly what to emphasize and what to de-emphasize. Coincidentally, we're running a little short on space ourselves, so we'll continue with steps 4 through 6 of the rational decision-making model in our next video. For questions, please leave them in the comment box below, and I'll do my best to get back to them in a timely fashion. Do also remember to like this video and subscribe.
Now, you have listened to that a short video clip on the rational decision-making model. So the speaker introduces the model and the talks of identification of the problem. As the first step, it talks of the identification of the decision. Then you weigh the established criteria or doing the comparison. And he has used the analogy of the house, to explain that in that short video. So that's basically what decision making is all about. It uses some models. There are some models that decision makers use, and these models help us to come up with a solution. So those models are prepared just to help us come up with different decisions in organizations or in institutions. So we shift to our next model. The next model is intuitive decision-making model. We're going to look at that model, intuitive decision-making model. That's a model we are going to discuss this session. So we are trying to say is that this type of decision-making model is dictated not by information or data, but by gut instincts. This form of decision-making requires previous experience and a pattern recognition to form strong instincts. So the model is made for people or for individuals who have a lot of experience with similar kinds of problems. So people with a lot of experience with the problem use this model to solve problems. They have already had proven success with the solution they're looking to implement. So the model talks about those experienced people. Like say, for example, the doctors. If a doctor has taken maybe his time, a lot of time in the organization, a lot of time in the field, then he can solve a number of problems. So people with experience, people with knowledge, and people with the skills use this model. It is based on intuition. Intuition is about the thinking, thinking capacity, the reasoning. So, and the experience gives people that impetus to solve the problem. And that's why it's called intuitive decision-making model. So this is a model used by people who have had an experience to solve some problems or some issues in an organization. Then next is the creative decision-making model. So this is a model that involves collecting information and the insights about the problem and coming up with the potential ideas of for a solution, similar to the rational decision-making model. So you collect information and insight about the problem. So the difference here between the two models, rational and the creative decision-making models, is that instead of identifying the pros and cons of each alternative, the decision maker enters a period which they try not to actively think about the solution at all. The goal is to have their subconscious take over and lead them to the right decision, similar to the intuitive decision-making model. This situation is best used in the interactive process so that teams can test their solutions and adapt as things change. So it's basically used for when teams want to adapt to change, but one thing that we need to understand is that it's also similar to the other model, which is the rational decision-making model. So I just want to move on and play another video, a clip to demonstrate on how the creative decision-making model and the intuitive decision-making model operates. So we shall look at this video clip, then we get to understand the application part of the models.
Recording in progress.
Now, let's look at that model. We are going to look at another model, and we are going to play a video clip here, and that video clip will help us understand how people make decisions using the intuitive decision-making model. So take time, listen to this video clip again, that will help you understand better.
Research on firefighters found that over 80% of their decisions rely on intuition. They use experience gained on previous calls to quickly size up the situation. This leads to recognition, which then generates a course of action without the need to deliberate or compare options. This same process was found in chess players. The grandmaster not only recognizes a wide range of patterns, they can often intuitively generate a high-quality move as the first one considered. And intuition is also used to recognize the unexpected, leading us to actively seek out more information. We then mentally simulate and possibly modify an action. If it won't work, then we consider the next option that comes to mind. To develop your intuition, then, experience is key. This means taking on new and challenging situations, constantly expanding your overall range of experience.
Busy people are faced with decision making every day. Intuitive and rational decision making are the two ways that an individual can approach problem solving. Some people are very aware of feelings or instincts and use them as guides to decision making. These types of feelings are instinctive and rely on intuition and not facts. In fact, intuition is the ability to have a grasp on a situation or information without the need for reasoning. In business, people use this type of decision-making when facts are unavailable or when decisions are difficult in nature. The second opposing type of decision-making is called rational decision-making, which is when individuals use analysis, facts, and a step-by-step process to come to a decision. Rational decision-making is a precise, analytical process that companies use to come up with a fact-based decision. Let's take a look at how the rational decision-making process can work in an organizational environment. Violet Jones is a manager at the Intestinal Distress Taco fast food restaurant. She is under enormous pressure from headquarters to increase her monthly profit. Violet is not sure what the solution is for her financial dilemma. She has to decide to use the rational decision-making model to determine the best path for a solution. To do this, Violet must follow these 6 steps. Number 1, define the problem. Number 2, identify the decision criteria. Number 3, allocate weight to the criteria. Number 4, develop the alternative. Number 5, evaluate the alternative. Number 6, select the best alternative. Let's take a look at the process Violet used to determine how to increase company profits for her store. Violet first needs to define the problem. This step is relatively easy for Violet as upper management has already identified the issue. Her store profits have not increased month to month, so she needs to find the best solution to increase profits. The next step facing Violet is to determine what criteria she will use to make her decision. The next step in the rational decision-making process is to identify the decision criteria. This step deals with choosing variables that will determine the decision outcome. In Violet's case, she needs to determine the criteria or information that is relevant and will help her increase her profit. The criteria are usually dependent upon the individual's values and beliefs. Violet will make her decision based on her belief that she should not eliminate any employees to save money. She will only cut costs in other ways, such as finding cheaper vendors, shortening store hours, changing menu options, etc. Her criteria will be: how will employees be affected? How will changes affect customers? And how will changes affect quality? Violet's next step is to allocate weight to the criteria. This means ranking which criteria is the most important to the decision-making process. Violet feels that the biggest weight should be given to how the change will affect employees. The other weights are then distributed equally. The next step starts to consider solutions. The next step is to develop alternatives, which is where the potential solutions need to be considered. There will not be any consideration in this step, just a generated list of alternatives. Violet has brainstormed a short list of alternative solutions. Select a new distributor of food and supplies that will cost less money. Shorten store hours, which will limit overall overhead costs. Lay off some employees who are making larger salaries, or increase promotions to lure new customers and sales. Now Violet needs to consider the alternative list she developed. Violet spent all weekend evaluating the alternatives to see which choice would have the least impact on employees, yet solve her financial dilemma. After much consideration, Violet has decided to submit her recommendation to management with the hopes that it will increase store profits. The last step in the rational decision-making process is to select the best alternative or choose the best decision. Violet feels that in order to increase profits and protect her employees' jobs, she needs to look for other ways to cut costs. Her recommendation to management is to find new vendors for areas of the company that will not affect product quality. For example, Violet has already found a cheaper vendor of cash register receipts that will save her $200 a month. In general, excellent managers are able to easily switch between analytical and intuitive decision-making. In addition, managers should not look at rational analytical decision-making as exclusive of intuitive decision-making. In fact, a combination of both types of decision-making usually yields the best results. In the rational model, the business decision maker needs to optimize the solution or select the best alternative. Certain types of business decisions are instinctive and rely on intuition and not facts. Intuition is the ability to have a grasp on a situation or information without the need for reasoning. The opposite of intuitive decision-making is rational decision-making, which is when individuals use analysis, facts, and a step-by-step process to come to a decision. The decision maker needs to optimize or determine the best solution for the problem by using a 6-step model. The steps are: number 1, define the problem; number 2, identify the decision criteria; number 3, allocate weights to the criteria; number 4, develop the alternative; number 5, evaluate the alternative; number 6, select the best alternative. In summary, employees should rely on a mixture of both intuitive and rational decision making in order to provide the best solution to business decisions. Number 6, select the best alternative.
Now, I just post that for video for some time so that you look at the steps for the rational decision making, and you have seen those steps for the rational decision making model from the first step to the last step. And those are the steps that we have been looking at some time back in our discussion this afternoon. So so the Speaker General has just repeated what we have said, but she has done it in a different way by citing examples of Violet, the issue of Violet, so on how she was to come up with a solution. So the first step was to define the problem, identify the decision criteria, and then allocate the weights to the criteria, develop the alternatives, evaluate those alternatives, and select the best alternative. Those are the steps that the speaker has been talking about in that video clip. Now, in that case, the speaker has also focused on the intuitive decision-making model, and the speaker gives us the way forward here, and she says that the intuitive decision-making model requires a grasp of the situation. So you need to grasp the situation more. So have the grasp or understand the situation better before you sort out the problem. But she also informs us that she also gives us advice that for these models to work smartly or effectively, then they should be used. Uh, 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 as a mixture. They should be used in such a way that you don't actually use one model and drop the other model. So you should combine these models to realize the better results. So with those remarks, I just want to stop there for the moment. Then we shall pick up another session another time. Thank you for your time this